Welcome into Before the Basket here on IUSTV. I'm Zion Brown, alongside Kara Adams. How's it going, Kara?
Pretty good. How about you?
Going well, going well. So we're here to recap the Hoosiers' latest game, a 72-68 loss against UCLA. And Kara, it was another game where just down the stretch, the Hoosiers could not get it done, this time in Assembly Hall.
Yep, it was a tough one, Zion. Another tough one. Just kind of like the same story for Indiana. You know, they fell down about 10, 12 points, but able to crawl their way back into the game, and then they just couldn't execute following down the stretch. And it was just a tough one for Indiana. You know, Mackenzie Paco missed that putback layup where he could have tied the game or taken the 71-70 lead. And then Indiana, they run the right play. Mackenzie's wide open for a corner three and just misses it. And it's just one of those things where they did the right things. They ran the right play. They took the timeouts correctly. Like, it kind of felt like this is going to be the game where they get over that hump and win it down the stretch, but just fell short once again.
Yeah, it definitely looked like this team had another one of those opportunities to beat a tournament team, which they had just done at Michigan State last Tuesday, but they weren't able to follow that up with another win. Now they have this just really extended break, kind of an odd break, 9 days in between games in the middle of February, but it'll be IU taking on Purdue, and they're still in the bubble, this Indiana team. So even though with everything that's gone on this season is not completely lost for Indiana. So when you look at this game on Sunday against the Boilermakers, who, by the way, have now lost 3 straight themselves, just what do you think Indiana will need to do to avenge that loss they took a few weeks ago in West Lafayette?
Well, I think going back to that, they're still in the tournament bubble. First, it's kind of almost fascinating in a way when you look at how their season has gone.
And then they're talking about expanding the tournament where there's teams like IU, which don't feel like they should be anywhere close to the tournament bubble, that are still right there.
It's interesting. We're in an interesting time of college basketball. But in order for them to keep those tournament dreams alive, I think they have to win on Sunday and beat Purdue. They need another quad one win. And in order to do that, for me, there's a couple things. Just for Indiana to control the controllable and execute down the stretch. And I think just be on the same page mentally and emotionally for them. You know, they've had a weird and tough past couple weeks. They know Coach Woodson's stepping down. It's emotional on them. They know their coach isn't coming back. But I think for Indiana, just controlling the controllable for them, especially don't go down don't go down 10 or 12 points. Because I think in games like Michigan, Maryland, UCLA, they went down, but then they got back in the game. But it was just they couldn't get over the hump finally. So I think they need to stay in the game like Michigan State, like they did when they played in Mackey Arena. You know, this is a winnable game for them. They know what they're going into. Got to guard Braden Smith too, of course, but he's playing lights out. But it's just a game that it's very winnable for them. And another thing I'll add is I think being on the same page mentally and emotionally, this is a chance for them to kind of rally around each other, win at their home court against their rival, and send Coach Woodson out with a win over his rival.
And when you look at that last game these two teams played, it was really Braden Smith and Trey Coffin-Rin that did pretty much, you know, a majority of the scoring for Purdue. I feel like in this matchup, Indiana needs to try to limit at least one of those guys.
For sure, certainly. And if you can lock down at least one of them, then they've got a chance to really win it.
All right, Kara, I'm going to ask you, what's your prediction for Sunday's game?
I think Indiana gets it done. I'm going to go 75-71. Another close game for Indiana, but I think they win it.
All right, well, we will see, and stay with us because in just a moment, Audrey Marr of the Hoosier Network will join us here and talk about the Hoosier season and the Purdue game as well on Before the Basket. We're back on Before the Basket, where I'm now joined by Audrey Marr of the Hoosier Network. How's it going, Audrey?
It's good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Audrey, we're just going to get right into it when it comes to this Indiana season as a whole. You've covered this team for the last couple of years. Just from your perspective and your eyes being around the team, what has led to this kind of chaotic season and the way everything's kind of unfolded as of late, and eventually leading to this Mike Woodson stepping down news that we got a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, well, I think it all boils down to inconsistencies. I think that's really just what I've seen in these last 2 and 3 years, just complete inconsistency with this IU team. And I think you see with this roster was built from the ground up. Nothing's clicked, and that was kind of the same to say for last year. Nothing really clicked officially. They had Khalil Ware, but nothing was working. So I think it's really, you see Indiana go on a complete run at home and maybe win a game on the road, but then they have the next game on the road, they lose by double digits. That's maybe the most consistent thing you've seen with this Indiana team, is that they just completely almost fall when they go on the road, or now, like this year, they're on a 4-game losing streak at home.
Last week, me and Kara talked a bit about kind of some names we're looking at in this coaching search. In your eyes, when you look at it, who would you like to see Indiana maybe talk to, or who are some names you think could really be in contention to be the next head coach in Bloomington?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of names being thrown around. I'm going to kind of go from the most realistic in my eyes to the most unrealistic. Okay. First, I think you have to say Dusty May here. I think he has all the qualities that Indiana's looking for in a head coach. And I know there's a lot of rumors about a new potential contract brewing, but I don't understand why not Mike Woodson, Scott Dolson wouldn't be making that call there. I think he's everything that Indiana's looking for right now. And he's winning. He's proven that he can build a program from the ground up. Look what Indiana did the last time they hired a coach like that. Next coach, I'm going to go with Mick Cronin. He's also pretty recently familiar with Indiana. But I think he's most likely one of those safe bets. And he definitely has a lot of experience in the field. And I don't see why he wouldn't at least get a call. I think he could turn this program around in a little bit. And then finally, this is kind of definitely the most unrealistic in my eyes, but I'm going to go with Shaka Smart. I think he is really enjoying his time at Marquette. I don't see a big kind of situation where he leaves his situation at Marquette. But if Indiana is looking for one of those coaches that can really turn the fans around and really just turn this program around, bring some excitement, I think Shaka Smart's your guy. And I think he brings a lot of excitement. I don't understand why I wouldn't at least get a call and see if there's at least any interest to see if he wants to take a step up to a bigger program. But I would be interested to see if that turns into anything.
You're thinking pretty big.
Pretty big.
Those are three kind of names that would be all, I feel like, big hires if Indiana were to make them.
Massive hires, yeah. I mean, it's not Brad Stevens, but I mean, Shaka Smart, you never know.
And you talked about UCLA, Mick Cronin specifically. I mean, going back to that game, it's another game where there was just a collapse at the end, and me and Kara talked about it a bit here. But why do you think these issues for Indiana really have persisted in crunch time all throughout this season?
I think the biggest thing is what I've seen is that they've never been able to play 40 minutes of a game. And it's either that they can come out of the gates hot, they play really well starting off, or they play a horrible second half, or it's you play horrible in the start of the game and then you play an amazing second half. I mean, I look back to that Wisconsin game, you go down right away 26-6, all from 3-pointers. That's also one of the biggest things. You can't guard the perimeter well. And I think that's been one of Indiana's biggest downfalls this season, and it's just not working. And that was also the same to say last year. So I don't know. I think it's really just you need to find a way to play all 40 minutes of a game. It's been working. It worked against Purdue when they did. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see if this is a game heading into Purdue that they do it again. But that's the biggest thing for me. It's in the crunch time. It's almost like they get a little bit tired and they put all their effort in to start the second half, which I think is they are a second half team. So I think they put all of that effort into the start of the second half, get hot, kind of take these teams by surprise, but then they almost lose it all in those final crunch time minutes.
In that first Purdue game, IU went to Mackey Arena and lost 81-76. At the end of January, if this Indiana team wants to get back at their rivals now back here in Bloomington, what needs to happen on Sunday?
Yeah, well, I think this is probably a game that has higher stakes than the last game did. I mean, now Purdue's going on a 3-game losing streak for the first time in 5 years, if I'm not mistaken.
That's ridiculous.
It's insane. It's insane to say that against a program like Purdue. And then you look at Indiana, they've lost 4 straight at home. Now they are having a coach that's not coming back. They have something to play for, but they're not playing it. And I think overall they just kind of need to defend their home court. They need to prove themselves. They have something to prove. I think the biggest thing that Indiana needs to do, the most obvious answer is containing Braden Smith. But what I'm looking at is how they're containing Trey Kaufman-Renn. I think he got the better of them that last game. That was pretty much the biggest downfall. They let Trey Kaufman-Renn open up the second half, go on a 7-0 run by himself, get Purdue the lead back. And I think it just caught them by surprise. So I think it's how you're going to go and handle those two players. I think those are probably the 2 key players that you need to watch out for heading into this matchup. And then again, Purdue's going to come in with the hot advantage. They're going to try and get that get-right game. So it's kind of how you're going to handle that if you're going to be able to play all 40 minutes of a game and handle those crunch time minutes.
It's a Purdue offense that it has really struggled over the last couple weeks, and so I'm really curious to see what they bring into Assembly Hall, whether they get right back on track, like you mentioned, or whether it's more of the same and we end up with another one of those close games. Right, Audrey, I'm going to ask you, what's your prediction?
I was stuck. I think Purdue's going to take this one. I think it's going to be their get-right game. I don't think they're going to let them lose another game in these last couple of 3-game losing streak in the last 5 games in the last 5 years. Goodness, is not in their favor. But I think I'm going to say Purdue 80-71.
I think I'm also rolling with the Boilermakers. I'll do another close loss though. However, for the Hoosiers, I will say Purdue 73-72. Not as high scoring as you think. Okay. I think it'll be kind of a slug it out game in moments, and in other moments there will be a lot of offense. And I think ultimately Purdue gets the best of IU again.
Yep, I see it happening. I mean, it's again. I think this is an Indiana's year to get the best of Purdue. And I think maybe it's just a lot of just more things happening that they're not able to kind of handle the pressure.
There we go. Well, I can't wait to see it. Thank you so much for joining us, Audrey.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching this episode of Before the Basket. For coverage of the Purdue game this Sunday, follow us at IUSTV Sports. Thank you for watching.